Hey, here we are again for our movie retrospective this week. I have to say I'm not really surprised that this one won the poll on Patreon, which, like I said, if you're not a patron, you should definitely go and become a patron. Even giving as little as $1 or $2 a month will let you vote on not only the movie that we do on the retrospective, but also the topic, like, for the upcoming week. And this was the one that won this week by a pretty comfortable margin. This is the Lucio Fulci classic, sort of, The House by the Cemetery.
Decent little flick.
It is. Okay, so we've done like a lot of Fulci films. We did Zombie like a few weeks back. And we've actually done the other two movies in his so-called Gates of Hell trilogy, which are The Beyond and City of the Living Dead. This is actually the third of those movies. They're not like, obviously it's not like a real trilogy, but they're kind of thematically similar. Although, and they have like a lot of the same actors in them and kind of the same atmosphere and stuff. So you can see why they kind of get lumped together. Although this one is the least connected to the other two, I guess. Because like the other two at least had a thing where, you know, oh, it's the gates of hell or someone's opening a gate of hell. This one, not so much. You know what I mean?
They kind of do the same thing with some of those Carpenter flicks with the... what do you call them? The
Apocalypse trilogy.
They're not really a trilogy.
Yeah, and in the sense that like Roman Polanski did like the Apartment trilogy, which was like Repulsion, Rosemary's Baby, and The Tenant.
Yeah.
Just because they all took place in apartment buildings and they were kind of thematically like tied together. So that's kind of what you've got going on in this situation. So House by the Cemetery came out in 1981. And although I don't think it was released in the US and the UK until the following year. Most people, this one is actually, even among Fulci fans, this one's a little divisive because as much as, you know, people kind of either love or hate Italian horror cinema for its sometimes questionable logic.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
This one is pretty incoherent.
That's what I was thinking. I was watching it and I was like, did I miss something? Fuck it. I just keep watching it.
It's definitely,
It's about tone. More than anything else.
Yeah.
It's not really about fucking logical fucking... Was it? I thought I heard Pookie Bang.
Yeah, I thought I did too.
Yeah, it's more about tone than it is like like you said, logical.
Yeah.
Thinking, shit. I don't know what, man, I'm kind of sleepy.
Which I guess, like, Dario Argento gets that too, but it's like this one, I feel like The Beyond was also kind of dreamlike. City of the Living Dead also kind of dreamlike. This one is probably the most dreamlike of them in the sense that there's a lot of plot elements that are introduced that seem like they don't go anywhere or seem like they don't make any sense.
The word I was looking for was continuity. There's not a lot of continuity in it. But it doesn't really matter. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like a ride at the Funhouse, or you know what I mean. There's not a lot of continuity in what you see in a Funhouse, but you still go through it. You enjoy it. It's like that. Yeah,
and it's definitely has. And I mean, I think I told you because I've seen this movie several times, but I hadn't seen it for several years. It's actually on. It's on Shudder and it's on Hulu. It might be on Tubi too, but I forgot to check. I actually watched it on Shudder, but I hadn't seen it for many years. So it's like I was glad to get to sort of revisit it. And there's just something about this one, even though I get that it doesn't really make any sense. I get that there's like some like weird goofy shit in there, like the bat thing, which we'll talk about. I get that, but there's just something about the atmosphere of this one that I really, really dig.
You can read into it and make it make sense. I don't know if it does. Like the whole bat thing. He was stabbing the hell out of that bat as he's going to stab through his hand. And a bat weighs a few ounces, and this dude's struggling with the fucking bat.
It was a super bat.
Like it's like it's a 30-pound bat. You know what I mean? That's whipping his ass, and it's just
that bat.
It is really ridiculous.
It had like really awesome jaw strength. Is what it was.
I'm thinking kind of the way the Italians did things sometimes is they just said, "What are we going to show them next?" I think they were just kind of making this up as they go. Or they had some shit shot and they said, put that scene in there. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, what happened with this one, and I'm not saying, like I said, of the three quote-unquote Gates of Hell movies, this is probably the least coherent, even though I'm not saying The Beyond is super coherent or City of the Living Dead was super coherent either, but they did seem to have like a more solid narrative than this one has, which, like I said, this one kind of goes in like a couple directions. I think what happened with this one was that it had several script writers.
That's what I think. It's going to go one way, and then it went the other way, and then it went the other way.
Well, see, the thing about it, okay, so Dardano Sacchetti, who works on a lot of Lucio Fulci's films, he wrote Zombie, he's written, like, most of his main ones, and I think that he was kind of approaching it, he wanted to come at it kind of like The Turn of the Screw, but also with, like, elements of The Shining, because The Shining had just come out, and they wanted to kind of do their own spin on it. So there are some elements in this movie that are very, very Shining-like, which I'll get to in a minute. But so he wanted to do that kind of thing with like this supernatural kind of thing. And Dardano also said that he's like, he was kind of inspired by growing up, like in this big, like creaky old house that was by a cemetery. And he had to like, you know, walk down like this little dark road, like to get to the house and everything. So he was kind of like bringing that to it. I guess Lucio didn't like the script or thought it should go in a different direction. So Lucio made some contributions. They got like another person in there. They got like a script doctor in there. And so they all kind of like threw in their ideas. And you can see there's like elements of, I even caught like elements of like The Omen. There's like just, it seems like they kind of just threw all these ideas in there and they're like, we'll just worry about it later, like whether it makes sense or not. You know what I mean? But that's not like a criticism necessarily, because as we said before, and if you are really into Italian horror cinema, you kind of have to learn to like mitigate your or you have to like manage your expectations, because like I said, a lot of times they're all about the gore. You know, Dario had this too, where it's like he just likes a really cool gory set piece, and then you kind of like have to write a story like just to kind of hang around your gore, so it'll kind of make sense enough that people will watch it.
I think a lot of it had to do with the Italian cinema experience back in the 70s and 80s. It's my understanding that the average Italian family didn't have a television during that period. What they had was that Italy was filled with fucking theaters, and a movie wasn't very expensive. It was like a nickel. So people would go and see 3, 4, 5 movies a week, maybe even more, especially if they were young. So these were kind of like, in a way, very artistic television programs. Yeah. They didn't cost a whole lot to make, and they made many of them a year. And there was supposed to be a bunch of rivalry and competition between the fans of, you know what I mean, the fans of these directors. So Fulci came out with a movie, you knew what movies were coming, and you had, we got to see that one. Remember, he did this one. So they didn't have to make as much sense. You're not talking about a big, full-length, full-budget American blockbuster. That's not what these were. They were just entertainment. You know what I mean? It was kind of like pulp entertainment. And what the good Italian directors did is that they just made shit look cool. Yeah. They had a cool look, really beautiful women, good-looking actors. You know, like the men were good-looking in them too, most of the time. And it was just... visually, it was supposed to be just like a visual experience. You weren't supposed to like overthink it. And I think this is a good example.
Plus, too, I think that Europeans in general in their filmmaking seem to have more of a tolerance for surrealism. Yeah. I don't know if, I mean, yes, we have David Lynch, yes, we have like other things like that, but I do feel like American filmmakers are kind of more loath to just have surrealistic aspects to their films, whereas in Europe they're just like, okay, I suppose so.
You can be a lot more risky with what you're doing when you take into account that the people that are watching this did not pay $25 to sit down and watch it.
They were, I got ripped off.
Yeah, that's not what happened. They paid a nickel to see the movie, 25 cents maybe to see the movie back in the 70s. So the expectations of the audience were very different.
And I mean, really, like I said, if you're going to go see a Fulci horror film, I mean, and I've said before, like Lucio Fulci made films in pretty much any genre. He made westerns, he made comedies, he made like sex farces, he made all that kind of stuff. So he made giallos as well. Yeah. Gialli, sorry, for all the Italians out there. But if you're going to see a Fulci horror movie, you're going for the gore. I mean, you know, and there's some really good gore set pieces in this. You know, it's very bloody. It's like it takes a while to get to, but like some of the set pieces are really good. So let's kind of talk about the story as it is, and it does have a story that kind of makes sense. But I kind of want to talk too about like a little bit like of all the stuff that they introduced that they didn't really do anything with. You know what I'm saying? So basically, what this story is about...
It's funny that you said that.
Well, you know...
They introduced and didn't do anything with. It's all the dead ends.
Yeah, and well, in the sense that... I didn't mean it to sound like, derogatory in any way, because I was just kind of like the people that review this movie that say, what about this and why was this introduced and why isn't anything? So I kind of wanted to just talk about that.
They're fucking with the script. It's more than one script. They're trying to weave a couple scripts in together. Hey, the Old Testament does it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And people still read that shit.
People read that shit. Yeah, there's story of Noah. There's
we just compared a Lucio Fulci gore
to the
film
Old Testament.
to the Bible.
Yeah, that's right, to the Old Testament.
You heard it here.
There's 2 flood stories woven together in there if you pay close attention.
Well, there's a couple creation
and there's
stories
2 or 3 creation stories, right? Yeah.
Which, if you haven't read the Bible in a while, I don't know.
Well, that's the way the Italians were.
Maybe, and that's actually a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, because
it's
the Vatican. The Vatican and the heart of Christianity.
Yeah, it's like all kind of like myth-making. They're just taking aspects of shit they like. We're like, hey, we liked this bit from The Shining, and hey, we like this bit from The Omen, and hey, we like this bit from...
Oh, you like Alien? Here's some more of that.
Yeah.
Oh, you like Friday the 13th? Here's some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, like I said, I will say that Friday the 13th totally ripped off.
Yeah.
Like the Italian
the Italian marketing strategy was whatever was a big hit at that time, and you liked that, they're going to give you some more of that.
Yeah.
Oh, you like Superman? Okay, we'll give you some more Superman.
They'll do their own spin on it, though. It's like they don't... Because people, kind of, denigrate it by saying, oh, it's a ripoff. But it's like, it's an homage. They're inspired by it. It's like, oh, let's make our own superhero movie. Let's make our own, haunted house movie. Let's make some... With aspects of it, but we'll do our own thing with it.
They're only a couple steps away from Turkish movies, okay?
Well,
if
Turkey...
you amp it up a little bit more, you got Turkey.
I mean, Turkey will straight up just...
rip the shit off.
Just take the character and call it... It's like, we'll put a dude, like a floppy dude, in a kind of Batman costume, and he's Batman.
Yeah.
They won't even, try to make a different character out of it.
No, they'll have Batman with a Steven Spielberg score from fucking Raiders of the Lost Ark playing. And then in the big fight scenes, they got the damn Star Wars theme playing. Like, copyrights? Oh, fuck that.
Yeah,
just
they're like...
put that shit
They
in
do
there.
not give a single fuck in Turkey. They do not.
Turkey. Nope.
But go check out some Turkish films. They're a riot.
Yeah, go check out Turkish Spider-Man.
Turkish Spider-Man, Turkish Star Wars.
Turkish Spider-Man, the motherfucker's a serial killer, basically.
Yeah.
He's a bad guy.
And he kind of has the same outfit, but I think it's green,
It's green. It's red and green.
I think it's red.
It's like the Christmas suit.
He's Christmas Spider-Man. Yeah. All right. So the story behind House by the Cemetery. So there's you got your opening scene, this house, which they did actually film because it is set in New York City. They did film in New York City. Some of it is set around Boston, and they did film around there as well. So it is where they're saying it is. The interiors were done in Rome though. So there's this old house. There's kind of a slasher movie beginning where, there's this couple that apparently were making out in this old house because that, fucking abandoned houses get them hot or whatever. So her boyfriend, Steve, has wandered off. I mean, obviously she's kind of running around the house being like, Steve, where the fuck did you go? This shit's not funny. And then she finds him, his fucking brains all sticking out and whatnot. And then she gets stabbed through the mouth, right through the back of the head, and it comes out her mouth like the blade. So, and that's the beginning. I don't know who these people are. I don't know if it has anything to do with anything, but there we are. So that's kind of the opening scene. Then we get into the main story, which is that there is this couple, and they're the Boyles. And that sounded bad when I said it, but it's Boyl. It's not like boils, like separating boils. So the dad, Norman, one of his colleagues has apparently flipped out and killed his mistress and hanged himself in this particular house. So Norman has to go to this town, which I guess is supposed to be outside of Boston. It's called New Whitby, which it's not a real place, but they're, homaging, Dracula, obviously. So he's supposed to go to this house and continue his colleague, Dr. Peterson. He's going to continue his research. So they're going to stay in this house while he's doing that. Now, this is also the house where the dude killed himself and all this other kind of shit. Or he killed himself at the library or something. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. But, so he killed himself in this town. So they move in. They have this child named Bob. Now, Bob is one of the things that everybody talks about when they talk about this movie. And it sucks because the kid the actor, seems like a completely good like child actor and stuff. However, the person who dubbed Bob's voice should be smacked. Because it's just, they just found, I don't know if it was a kid or if it was an adult. They usually get like a woman, like a voice actor, to do like a little boy's voice. But it's just so irritating. It's so shrill of him just being like, mommy, mommy, you know, just like, and it's just like, oh my God, please kill me. It wasn't as bad as I remembered, like when I rewatched it. But I remember like when the first time I saw it, I was like, holy fucking crap, that poor kid. And it's like, now everybody is going to think that he really talks like that, even though he doesn't, because he's Italian. So they move into this house. Now, one of the things that reminds me of The Shining is that before they move to the house, they have like, in their apartment in New York City, they have like a photograph of a house, which spookily looks exactly like the house they end up moving into, even though they're not real clear over it's supposed to be the same one or not. So Bob keeps seeing this little girl in the window of the house in the photograph, and her little expression changes. Like she's like, oh, like don't go there, like don't go inside, don't go and stuff. So she's getting warned, just like you know, Danny gets warned before he goes to the Overlook. Because no one else can see this little girl in the photo, because his mom is like, you're fucking high, Bob. I don't see anything in the, you know, just, you're crazy. So they end up going to this house, and then you get like your kind of standard haunted house kind of shit. There's like creaky noises, like the dad starts hearing like what sounds like a baby crying or like a little kid crying or something. They get this weird girl that shows up named Anne, and I think it's the same chick that was in Inferno, I want to say. Was she in Inferno or Tenebrae? She's that Italian actress. She's got like this real intense eyes and those real dark eyebrows. Yeah. So she shows up, and this is the part that reminded me of The Omen, because she reminds me of like Mrs. Blaylock, like when she shows up like, hey, I'm the nanny for the child of Satan and stuff. So she kind of reminds me of that. But that's one of the things that kind of bothers me, is that Anne is like super creepy, and she's like, hey, I got sent over by like the real estate agent or whoever like put them in the house, and you know, to be your babysitter or your nanny. And she doesn't really talk. Like you can ask her like direct questions, and she'll just like stare at you, and then they do like a close up on her eyes, and she's like looking at you all funny and shit. And she does like super sketchy shit. Like they move into the house, and the cellar has like, you know, boards across it, like someone's nailed it closed, and she's over there like prying the shit off of the door, like she's gonna release whatever's in the cellar. So she does weird shit like that, and then the dad's like, hey, what are you doing? Or just like looks at her, and she's just like, what? I'm not. Yeah. And then he's like, oh, okay, I suppose so. And then like he doesn't do anything about it.
Yeah, and what was weird, eventually she gets killed, and really for no reason, and
yeah, she gets beheaded.
Yeah, and it doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, because I thought, I mean, the first time I saw this movie, which was like
she's important to the story, but she isn't.
Well, I thought that she was like a henchman.
Yeah.
Like for the villain that's like down in the cellar.
Yeah.
But, well, maybe she is, but then, like, once she served her purpose,
right,
like, the demon doctor or whatever is just like, fuck her.
I think you're reading into it too much. I mean, you can read
That's
into
what I
movie.
do.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know what I'm saying?
That's what I do.
We're reading into it to try to force this movie into making sense. I don't think it actually... I think they were making it up as they were going along, really.
Yeah, maybe.
I think she was going to be a more important character, but it got edited out.
But then they were like, fuck it.
Yeah, like, fuck it. Let's just get rid of her. The story can't go that direction. It was something like that.
Because there was one point where somebody gets killed in the house while the family is out, and she's like cleaning up what is very obviously a very large blood stain on the kitchen floor, and the wife comes home, who's played by Catriona MacColl, who's in a bunch of Fulci movies. She was also in The Beyond, and she was also in City of the Living Dead. She's a British actress, I believe. And Anna's like scrubbing all this blood off the floor, and she's just like, hey, what you doing? And like all Anne says is, oh, I made coffee. Yeah. No one says anything about like this huge blood stain. Maybe they thought it was from the bat. I don't know. But yeah, so...
Like I said, we're reading into it again to try to make it make sense.
That's the fun.
I think what happened is that the movie was going to have a different ending.
Yeah.
And
maybe
they changed it. You know what I mean? In mid-making of the movie, I think. And they said, well, let's not cut her all out of the movie. We paid her. She looks good. So we're going to keep her in the movie, but we're going to kill you off. Now there's these guys living in the basement. You know, they're kind of like a failed attempt at immortality. Which I don't see how that related to her, but she seemed to know about it. But like I said, we're reading into it. I think the story was going to be different.
I think, like I said, I think they liked the idea of Mrs. Blaylock from The Omen. Yeah. Like a nanny showing up to, like, look after
but they
the situation.
Didn't really know what to do with that, or they changed the story.
Maybe. Yeah. Another thing, too, that reminds me of The Shining, and that they don't really, like, flesh out much, is that when Norman comes to the house, like the dad, when he comes to the house to finish, like, Dr. Peterson's research, several people in the town, including the real estate agent and the librarian, all this other kind of stuff, they say him, it's like, man, you were just here last summer. Haven't you been here before? So everybody, like, talks to him like he's been there before. Yeah. And then they also say that he has a daughter. And he's like, look, it's like, I've never been to this town before. I have a son, not a daughter. I've never had a daughter, so I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Right. So it's almost kind of like they did a thing with The Shining where it's like, you've always been the caretaker, that kind of thing. But they didn't really, like, do anything with that either. So, but because I liked that aspect that people kept telling him, like, that he looked familiar.
Could have been the Blaylock character was going to be, like you said, kind of like a caretaker over the boy, which would have been like Danny, and she was going to groom him into, like, a satanic thing having to do with the house. But I think they changed the script.
Maybe they did,
and then they got rid of her, and then
like, it didn't make any sense afterward.
They came up with something they thought was better, which were the dudes down in the basement. And I actually think that was a good idea. It's just that they should have coherently told that story.
Yeah, because a lot of the reviews I've seen of this, like, even people that like it, because I do really like this movie. I have a lot of affection for this movie. It's like, it has, like, these really creepy, like, I really like the little girl, May, who hangs out with Bob, except nobody can see her because, spoiler alert, I think, pretty sure she's a ghost. You know what I mean? She was the one that warned him, like, not to come there. So I do really like this movie, but I do kind of feel like, so what ends up happening is that as Norman is, like, researching what the fuck happened with Dr. Peterson, he finds out that Dr. Peterson actually was found out that the house he was staying at had once been owned by this doctor, Dr. Freudstein, which I love because it's like Frankenstein, but also like Freudian.
Like
so
Freud,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a little on the nose, but okay.
Freudenstein.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was like a Victorian era, like late 19th century. So he lived in this house. And he had apparently, and this is kind of Lovecraftian, it reminded me a little bit of Cool Air, actually. And I think Fulci wanted to go, like, in a more Lovecraft direction. Yeah. So you can see where that influence came in as well. Where this doctor thought he wanted to live forever by basically renewing his cells with, by killing people. I don't know if he was, like, eating the people or if he was just, like, infusing them somehow. Because he wasn't looking too good, I gotta say.
No,
like, when they...
beef jerky.
Like, when they finally do the reveal of, Dr. Freudstein at the end, it's like, he's looking a little zombie-like. He looks like he doesn't really have a mouth. It's kind of all,
looking kind of dehydrated.
Yeah, looking a little jerky man. Yeah, it does kind of look like that.
But, see, had Fulci told that story from the very beginning coherently, and so there was, like, a normal progression, he could have done a lot better job. But I'm telling you, based on what I saw... They changed the story a couple times in the process of filming this movie, I think.
Well, I feel like they were trying to, like, it almost felt like Fulci was trying to make, like, a mad scientist, like a Lovecraftian mad scientist movie. Like I said, like Cool Air, which is what this kind of reminded me of.
But it was like The Shining and The Omen.
Yeah, then they wanted some supernatural shit on top of it.
It's kind of like that Italian ice cream called Spumoni.
Yeah.
Okay, you put some vanilla, some chocolate.
It's a Spumoni
of a movie. You put some fucking strawberry. You put some pistachio ice cream. Pistachios, coconut, all right? And some chocolate syrup on it with some pineapple.
Because fuck yeah, man. It's all
and
good.
Put some fucking whipped cream on it.
Right.
And that's the thing that the Italian... I noticed... Yeah, Spumoni.
We just like all of this stuff, so just put it all in there.
Put it all in there. It's an Italian thing.
Sure.
It'll all work itself out.
Well, and like I said, they kind of, like, you can go with kind of a surreal aspect. Like I said, it's a really cool, like, surreal... I really do have a lot of affection for this movie because I really like I said, I especially like all the supernatural shit, like, with May, and, like, she's really creepy, and, like, her warning Bob about everything. But yeah, it does kind of feel like they were trying to do, like, a mad scientist Lovecraft thing, and then it kind of got they
with
wanted to
the Shining.
They wanted to add like supernatural elements, like is like, you know, from like with the ghost girl and like all this other stuff. But the interesting thing about this, and I think maybe why this also gets put in with City of the Living Dead and the Beyond, is that Fulci's movies, particularly his horror movies, always have like real bleak endings. You know what I mean? They don't like, because I feel like a lot of sort of more traditional horror movies, they kind of end with a, you know, oh, you know, yay, like normality is restored. Like even though a lot of people got chopped up, but at least like one person got away and like killed the killer or whatever. So it's like, you know, it's almost kind of like they're restoring normality at the end. Whereas Fulci's movies, like they always end in this really weird, like existential, everyone's fucking gonna die and go to hell kind of thing. So it's like, that's what happened in The Beyond. That's what happened in City of the Living Dead. Like they just ended up in hell. And in this one, even though the ending is sort of ambiguous, I think probably, and like I said, this is spoiler alert if you haven't, but come on, this movie came out in like 1981, so get with the program. But so they find like Dr. Freudstein like down in the cellar with all of the bodies, and there's heads and arms and stuff. It looks really good, like all the gore and stuff.
That's really the best part of the movie.
It is, yeah, like the big like finale.
Yeah.
So they get down there, like fucking Norman gets killed, like he just gets his fucking throat ripped out. That looks fantastic, obviously. And then fucking you know, the wife, I always call her Catriona McCall because I can't remember her character's name.
It doesn't matter.
In this movie, so it's just like, well, I know the actress's name because she's in a bunch of his stuff. So she's like trying to save Bob, and they're trying to like, he's trying to get her out of the cellar. They can't get the door open because it's all boarded up or whatever. So the cool thing too is that they found like Freudstein's like tomb. It was like a grave thing, like slab, but it was like in the floor. You know what I'm saying? Like the floor of the house. It was like under a carpet and stuff. So that was like another kind of freaky thing that they discovered. And so it was kind of cracked from where the real estate lady got killed earlier. Like it cracked and like her ankle got stuck in there. Yeah. Fun fact, I'm pretty sure that's the same actress that was in Devilfish, which was like the Italian ripoff of Jaws that was on, well, one of the Italian ripoffs. Yeah, it was on Mystery Science Theater. That's why
they were trying to one better Jaws by making it a mutant Jaws.
It was like
a shark and a squid.
It was like part squid and like part. It wasn't even just like a regular shark. It was like a megalodon, like a big fucking huge prehistoric shark. They were like, just like, fuck that. We're just going one up, man. We're going to put fucking tentacles on it and everything. Yeah. And it's genetically engineered. Yeah. So, yeah.
Fucking funny shit.
But yeah, so like at the end, when like Catriona is like trying to push Bob like out of this little fucking crack in the grave, very like womb-like as it was, or like pushing him out. Now, Catriona gets killed also by Freudstein because he just like kills everybody because that's just how he rolls. Now, it appears that Bob escapes, but when he comes out of the crack in the tomb, he gets pulled up by May, the little girl, and then suddenly everything in the house is like not shitty looking anymore. He's just like in the room with like all the dolls. May has her little outfit on. Mary Freudstein is there, whose grave we had seen earlier. So I'm presuming that Bob died also. But it was okay because he could hang out with like the ghost people now. Yeah. So like I said, that's kind of like the way they ended. But I'm pretty sure Bob died at the end. I'm just saying. Yeah. I mean, well, because he was hanging out with the ghosts. But in a way, they were kind of like, well, that's not such a bad thing. Okay. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's what. But yeah, so like I said, I don't recommend Lucio Fulci's movies to people that are not familiar with like Italian horror movies, or who are not like, I don't want to say like more adventurous like horror watchers and shit like that. I mean, people love these movies for a reason, but
it's the tone.
You really have to be in the mood to watch, and just be sure this does have a story. There is like, the doctor and the thing, and he's trying to like live forever, and he's like slaughtering all these people, and somehow that's like caused him to live like 150 years or however old he is. So it does kind of make sense, but the supernatural stuff seems like doesn't really like gel with that, I guess. Maybe he has like, I don't know what all the kid crying is in the house. Like, I guess that's like people that he's killed and they're just like haunting the place. You know what I mean? So that kind of works, because he has killed a bunch of people in that house. So it's like totally haunted.
Is a visual medium. It's showing you things, and that's what the Italians do. They just show you some stuff. It's a trip. You don't worry about it too much. You go, wow.
Yeah, you definitely don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it, yeah. And it does have a pretty creepy tone because it's showing you one thing, but then the soundtrack that's laid over it might be kind of creepy because it doesn't quite fit. Like it might sound a little too happy for the situation, or it might sound like, I don't know, like it's piano and it might be slightly off key, but it's just different. It's just weird.
There's something unsettling about this movie.
The thing is that this type of film worked really well in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah.
Because of the technological limitations of the time, it produced a certain tone that we grew up watching it, and it's just a trip. Some of these same directors went on into the modern era and tried to make movies using modern technology. They just came out like shit. You see. Remember the Dracula one? Who did the Dracula one?
Dario Argento.
Dario Argento. Yeah, that
was awful.
Awful. Okay, and it's because I think
poor Dario.
I think the technological limitations of those days actually added a certain amount of fucking tone, or
it enhanced
their weaknesses in a certain way. When you gave them free reign to do whatever they wanted, and you gave them some technology, they just then you end up with something that's Asylum was doing better. Asylum made better movies than that.
Yeah.
You know?
Which, like I said, it's kind of a shame.
Asylum doesn't make bad movies. Not really. They're just entertaining movies, like something from the Sci-Fi Channel, and you watch them and you just fucking laugh.
Well, yeah.
They're supposed to be what they are. They're good at doing what
that's what I mean.
Nazis at the Center of the Earth is a fucking masterpiece.
They know exactly
what it is.
What they're making, and they're not making any. They don't have any pretensions that they're making anything good.
And really, I don't think these classic Italian directors could really make an Asylum movie. It wouldn't come out right.
Well, the thing about Lucio Fulci, the thing about Dario Argento, I was probably Lucio Fulci a bit less, because he was more, as much as he had like an artistic vision and he was like an artistic filmmaker, and I think he doesn't get a lot of credit for how nicely shot like a lot of his movies are. Like the cinematography is like really nice, like the framing is really nice. It's not just like a cheap cash grab, but he was a little more workmanlike. He wasn't like super into, I mean, he liked horror movies, but he made like a bunch of different kinds. Dario more of an artiste, I guess. But the problem is that, once you've kind of lost that spark, or you don't really have that vision anymore, or I don't know, it just seems like maybe as they get older, they get kind of ossified. Yeah,
directors have a half-life. I mean, even Cameron, for me, I don't give a shit what Cameron does. His shit isn't any good anymore. It was, but they make money and they're not hungry anymore, and they get older. And they just...
Although, that's one thing that I like, as we mentioned before about surrealism, that's one thing that I like about David Lynch, is that, like, the more successful he got, he just got weirder and weirder.
Yeah.
So I just feel like the last feature movie he made, Inland Empire, was just, like, the most Lynchian. It was the fucking weirdest of all of his things.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And they did Twin Peaks The Return, and that was, like, super weird. So he just got weirder and weirder. So it's like, I really, really like that. I respect that. And it's still, like... And I loved Inland Empire as fucking... crazy and confusing and unsettling and creepy as it was. I still haven't figured it out entirely. I get the gist, but like I said, a lot of his stuff's real
it's hard to make a good low budget movie. It is.
Yeah.
Especially with modern technology. I think it was easier to make a good low budget movie back in those days. The best low budget movie I've seen recently that was just piss poor low budget was Velocipaster.
Yeah.
And it's because of the script, and they knew exactly what they were doing, and that's a fucking awesome flick. Awesome. It knows exactly what it is, and it gives you exactly what you wanted.
Well, yeah, and we've said this a lot of times too, that I really feel like, yes, visuals are cool, and yes, film is a visual medium, but if you don't have the writing,
it's got to be it was the script,
then
the script and the edit.
You don't have much of anything.
The material that's in there is fucking genius.
Although cool visuals go a long way, I will say that. But story is always like the essence of...
Velocipaster gave you cool visuals like on pennies. Tiny budget. But
it was just like funny.
It was the energy behind it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You could tell they were just having like the fucking best time
falling
ever.
Because they got eaten by the fucking the dinosaurs, and it's like they were playing football, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. It's just fucking funny.
And I loved the dinosaur too. Like I loved the dinosaur in the ninja fight. That was my favorite part.
Dinosaurs and ninjas and shit.
That was my favorite part.
Yeah.
But yeah, seriously. So like I said, I don't recommend Lucio Fulci movies to just anybody that's just like a dilettante or, it's only casually likes horror movies. You kind of have to be really into horror, and you have to kind of like admire where they were going with it. But like I said, this one, as much as I love this movie, you can see that they had like a whole bunch of different ideas, and they were just kind of like threw them all in the pot and they're like, yeah, it'll just work itself out. Which it kind of does, because it kind of comes across as this really weird, creepy. But like I said, if you want like a fucking linear, this story makes sense.
That's a Germanic concept.
You're not going to get
the Italians weren't into that. They were like, emotion and visuals. That was it.
Yeah, it was almost like a weird, like expressionist kind of. It's kind of like that. Or impressionistic, rather.
But the thing is that was look at Troll 2.
That's valid.
That's what the Italians did. That's culturally their cinema was like that.
And that is a delightful.
The most
classic.
coherent of them all would have been like the Man with No Name series.
Yeah.
That was pretty. I forgot the name of that fucking. What's the name of that director?
Sergio Leone.
Sergio Leone. Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue. Leone actually told coherent tales, but most Italian westerns aren't coherent. They're fucking stupid too, crazy, absolutely insane.
Like I said, I think they're more into like impressionistic or dreamlike sort of logic. Yeah. Which that's a totally valid approach.
Yeah.
I think.
That's what they're doing.
Whether the person watching it is gonna like get it or like relate to it or like it. Like I said, you really have to be in the right frame of mind.
I'm gonna say in terms of Italian director, Sergio Leone was the best. He's best out of all.
Well, yeah, I think most people have said that.
Yeah, he's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's important. This movie though, I'm gonna say it's an important film if you're into horror. If you're a horror connoisseur, you probably have already seen it.
Yeah, I would think if you're
the Italian stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you at least should have seen this one, Gates of Hell,
right.
City of the Living Dead, Zombie, and The Beyond. I mean, those are kind of the ones. And I said, and I mentioned this on our zombie review, I think, that I'm like a big advocate as far as Fulci films go. I'm a big fan of The Psychic, so I always try to like plug that. That's his giallo film, but it also has a little bit of a supernatural element. So I always kind of plug that because that's kind of one of his lesser known.
Just because it's kind of scatterbrained doesn't mean it wasn't a good movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah. And also
it's important. It's been around. You know what I mean?
And people are still talking about it nowadays. Yeah. Like, you still get younger horror fans that are still into it. So, like I said, there is obviously something that a certain type of person responds to.
If you've been drinking, it's probably even better.
Yeah, well,
if you're relaxed.
If you'd been drinking, you probably would have laughed yourself into a hernia at that bat thing.
Yeah,
because you were sober, and he was just like, he was dying when that bat thing came up. Like I said, this was the first time he'd ever seen it. I've seen it probably 5 or 6 times.
He was fighting that bat like it was a 50-pound dog.
My favorite part of that whole sequence.
It's on his head, and he can't get it off.
My favorite part of that whole sequence was that the bat actually first gets stuck in his wife's hair, and he just kind of stands there going, huh.
Yeah.
Maybe I should do something about that. And she's like, hey, little help here. You know what I mean? This fucking bat's coming.
Probably would have scared me as a kid, though, if I'd seen it. It probably would have scared me.
Well, like I said, there's some really unsettling like shit in it.
Yeah.
Like that scene where
they came rolling down the stairs.
Yeah, like that, and and they foreshadowed that like with the little girl May like standing in front of the shop window, and that like, creepy mannequin, and like its head comes off, but it looks like a real head, like it's all bloody and fucking shit like that.
It was a lot more gory than Friday the 13th Part 1 and 2. They were showing them hacking that woman's head off. And it's a pretty good effect.
It was. This actually has really good gore effects, and it is pretty fucking gory, like most of his movies were. But and also, they couldn't make Fulci couldn't make a gore film without some maggots in it. So when Dr. Freudstein gets stabbed at the end, all the fucking maggots come out, and those are real maggots. Because
the end of this one kind of reminded me of that horror movie. What was the one where all the dead people were coming out and grabbing people, and I think there was a doctor behind it. Body something or other. Shit. I think it was an American movie.
Did we review it?
We reviewed it.
Dead and Buried?
Dead and Buried.
Yeah.
There's something about the end of this one kind of reminded me of Dead and Buried. I need to see Dead and Buried again.
I think that's still on Shudder as well.
That's not Italian, is it?
No.
That's American, right?
As far as I remember.
It had kind of like an Italian feel
sensibility to it, sure.
Like they had seen these movies.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it was a guy who was bringing people back to life, wasn't it?
Yeah.
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 He was making zombies. Yeah.
Yeah, so it does kind of have some, although that came out later.
Yeah.
When did Dead and Buried come out? We reviewed it, like I said.
I gotta see it again.
It was 81. It might have come out the same year as this, or maybe a year or two later.
I saw Dead and Buried like on HBO when HBO was new, and it scared me.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
That has some creepy shit in it too.
Yeah, it must have been about 13.
Yeah.
When that came out, maybe 14, something.
And like you said, this also has some like really creepy like imagery in it.
Yeah.
And like I said, to me, it's like not even the gore is really good, but to me, it's the shit like pulling the rug aside and seeing that, that tomb slab, that little girl like in the window, like in the picture, like just, I really like just real subtle imagery like that. Yeah. Like to me that's creepier, but I like the gore as well, and the gore effects in this one are really good. So yeah, if you haven't seen any of Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy, we've reviewed all of them now. This is the third one, so go us. But yeah, check them out if you're into that kind of thing. And that'll do it for this retrospective, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.